What's up guys, it's iOS Pro, and the iPhone XR has been out for about 2 years now, almost 3, and was recently replaced by the iPhone 11 in 2019. In this video we'll tell you guys whether or not you should still buy an iPhone XR today in 2020. So first of all, the pricing and the thickness of the phone. So the pricing was originally $749 on our website back in 2018. Then they lowered it down to $599 in 2019. They made the prices a little bit more affordable. And the thickness of the phone as well. You notice that the iPhone XR is about a little bit thicker than the iPhone 8 because they actually had to make room for the Face ID in the LCD display. So the LCD display is what makes it thicker than the iPhone 8 and other phones, because the LCD needs a backlight to power the display, because the backlight sticks out a little bit from the back of the display. It needs more room in the frame, so that's why they made it thicker, and the bezel's thicker as well. So yeah, so that's why they did that. Okay, next up, I'm going to talk about the durability of the phone. So the iPhone XR back glass is actually more durable than the iPhone 11 standard, and the front glass is actually more durable than the XS and XS Max models actually. This is due to the display being thicker, because LCD displays are actually thicker than OLED displays, because OLED displays, you don't need as much room to fit the display in for OLED displays like the iPhone 10, XS, XS Max has. So their glass is actually thinner, so that's why the XSs do shatter easily when you drop them. It's because of how thin the display is, because you guys can see the display on the iPhone XR is very thick, and that's why the durability testing and everything on Pro's video I saw a couple weeks ago showed that the XR actually outperformed the XS and the iPhone 11 standard because they use thicker glass. And I think what the difference was on the back glass is because they made the glass on the 11 standard a little bit thinner than they did on the XR, so that's why the iPhone 11 and everything on Pro's video shattered more easily than XR. So I think that's why, due to the thickness of the glass, I think that's what makes it more durable. The thinner the glass is, the weaker it is. The thicker it is, the stronger it gets. That's what I think, I'm not sure. But that seems to be the theory here of why it's more durable than the XS and the iPhone 11 standard, so that's the durability there. So really interesting there. Okay, next up, the battery life. So the battery life on the XR is actually better than the XS, 11s, and 11 Pro models. So the first reason is it doesn't have as much pixels to push on its display. So that's why it's better than the OLED display phones, because the backlight doesn't use individual pixels to power the display. It uses a separate backlight. So with the backlight, it actually saves power. With an OLED display, you actually have to use the whole display to power the phone. So that's why it takes more power, because on OLED displays, they have to require each little pixel to light up to power the display. On the XR models, they use a backlight, so only the backlight powers it. It doesn't use the whole display and every little pixel. So the display does not push out as many pixels. So that's why the battery life is better on the XR. The second reason is the amount of RAM it has. So when I looked at the amount of RAM here, you notice on the Geekbench, the XR has 2 gigs of RAM. The iPhone 11 actually has an extra gig of RAM, so the 11s actually have 3 gigs of RAM. Well, this one only has 2 gigs, so I think the XS has 3 gigs, I'm not sure. But with less RAM to push, you can save a lot of power. So that's the other reason why it has better battery life. And the third reason is it doesn't have the telephoto or ultra-wide camera from the XS and the 11, so without the other cameras there, you don't need as much power from the battery. So basically, when you reduce the amount of features on the phone, it actually saves a lot more power. So less features, better battery life. So the more features they add onto the phone, the more battery life it's going to take up. So that's why the XR is better than the 11s and the XS Max models. So really cool. Okay, next up, I want to talk about the performance of the XR. So the XR uses the A12 Bionic chip that the iPhone XS uses. So when I go into the Geekbench here, and comparing it to the iPhone 8 here with the A11 here, you'll notice the scores are slightly higher on the XR here, from 4265 to 4800, and the multi-core from 10630 to 11389. So slightly higher scores than the Geekbench here. But when we're comparing that to device 813 here, like the iPhone SE of 2020 here, you notice the scores go from 4800 to 5458 and 11389 to 13825. So if you're using device 813, the score is going to be a little bit higher than the XR or the A12. So in case you're wondering about that, so you do get slightly lower scores, but the phone is still about the same speed as the 11 and XS. So really cool. Okay, next up, the cameras. So this is a wide-angle camera, 12 megapixel camera from the iPhone XS and XS Max. So this is the wide-angle camera. They only have the wide angle, but no telephoto though. They did that to reduce costs. So I want to go in the camera app here. You notice they were able to integrate portrait mode into the wide angle camera, but it was only face detection, so there's no object detection in this camera. They only have face detection, so see no person detected. So the portrait mode in the 10R models will only work if there's a person detected. So you can't just do any random object. So it's like when I switch it here, you see it detected my face. So because since there's a person now, like me, like I'm recording here, you'll notice that when it detects my face and blurs the background out. So really cool. So this will also let you change the aperture here. You see when I move the aperture from over to the right here, you see it blurs the background out. When I move it more to the left, you see it gets clear. So that's actually really cool here. So here's something else that's really cool. So if you have used the front camera, only the front camera gets the stage lighting options right here. But if you're using the rear camera, you don't get those options. So only the front-facing camera gets the stage lighting options. So in high key mono. So that's really cool. So that's basically how the portrait mode works as well. And you see it has the exact same camera stuff from the 10S models here. So it looks very clear. Kind of the same for the 11 as well. So the 11 and 10Rs models have the exact same cameras. And this video can also go up to 4K as well. You see you can change the frame rate here, 4K in HD. You can also get slow motion up to 240p right here. Yeah, you see, you can change the frame rate of the slow motion like to 240p, like 240 frames per second. I meant, not that. That was this video. And you got time lapse as well. So, but you don't get the slow motion front-facing camera from the 11 though. So that's the only thing you don't get from the 11 is the front-facing slow motion cameras. And with the new 10R models, you also get the controls from the 11 down here. So 10R and 10 models only, I think. I'm not sure about the older ones, but they gain the same controls from the iPhone 11 and 11 Pro models. So that's a new feature for iOS 14. The 10R gets the same controls from the 11 by swapping up. So that's really cool. So that's basically the cameras on the 10R. So they're really clear and really good for taking pictures today. So really cool, or at any time. So really cool there. Okay, this last thing I want to talk about is the touch sensitivity. So the 10R was actually the first one to remove 3D touch and replace it with haptic touch. So when I go to accessibility, go to touch here, you'll notice that the 10R only has haptic touch. So if you guys are on iOS 14 Beta 2 or anything below that, you'll get haptic touch on the older models. But if you update to Beta 3 of iOS 14, like my iPhone 8 here, so my iPhone 8 here is running iOS 14 Beta 3 here. You notice when I go into accessibility here, go to touch, you notice Apple has temporarily removed 3D touch from the 3D touch devices. So if you're on Beta 2, you'll still have 3D touch. So this will come in like a later beta, in case you guys are wondering about that. So it is a 3D touch device, but it's been turned off by software. So basically the 10R, the first one to remove 3D touch in iOS 12. So in case you guys are wondering about that. So basically a long press like this. See a long press, and you get the same pop-out menu. Want to do it again? You see, I get the same pop-out menu as a 3D touch device. So that's really cool. So overall, you should buy the 10R in 2020. So because it is a much better version, in case you guys cannot afford the 11 models, you can still go to a cheaper iPhone 10R here. So this 10R is a lot cheaper, and it's more affordable than the 11. So yeah, so that's pretty much it for this video. If I did the video, give it a thumbs up in the video.